We good?
We're good.
You know how to zoom?
Yeah. Hold on. I got it.
Get up.
We're on page 92, section 4.1.
Yeah.
I got it.
92, section 4.1.
How long is it going to take us to do chapters 4 and 5? I'll be the reader first.
Well, we only have one more test till the end.
Yeah, but next week is exam review.
That's right.
So.
Is this thing infrared?
Do it during exam review?
No, exam review. Our test in here is May 21st. Exam review is the 24th and the 25th and the 26th. And exams start the 27th.
He's filming you.
Okay? Billy, if you're going to do that, you got to...
Yeah.
Gotta do it right. Gotta do it right. Okay, so we're on 4.1, page 92. We're talking about populations. Yes?
Can I go to the bathroom?
Didn't you just get in here?
Yeah.
Should have gone before you got in here.
You should have enough time in between classes.
Go ahead.
HG double hockey stick.
Whoa, what's the hay?
Now, if you recall, we go organism and many organisms together make up a what?
Biosphere. Population.
A population, very good. We're going to discuss about population growth today. We call this population dynamics. Organisms growing. And one of the things about populations is their dispersion pattern. How they mix themselves up in an area. And we have three different patterns that we see. One is called a uniform pattern.
Yeah, I know.
She's going to sit
Hey, you want to sit in? Okay. Very nice. Now, the uniform distribution pattern is when organisms have about an equal amount of space between them. We see this for a lot of different reasons. For plants, often they have to suck up from the ground a certain amount of water, for instance. And so if this plant is sucking up a certain amount of water, nothing can really grow very close to it. And the same with this plant, and the same with this plant. So they have what we call a uniform distribution. Now, in animals, can you imagine how a uniform distribution might happen?
Probably.
A large scale.
What's that?
A very large scale.
Okay, on a large scale, but why? Why would they be uniformly spread out?
Because they eat different things.
Hands up.
Finish.
So they can eat the food around them and then they would have their own area.
You're correct. What
Because they
keeps
all
them
live in
uniformly
groups.
distributed, though? Why don't they clump together?
Because it's so big. They wouldn't have enough food.
Because they mark the territory.
They have territoriality.
Boom.
Territoriality is something animals exhibit. You may have noticed your dog doing it. Kind of patrols his yard, pees on all the bushes around, marks his territory, and other animals know not to come in that territory. And so if organisms have territoriality, it kind of keeps them uniformly spread out. Now this is a clump, listen, this is a clump distribution pattern. Here we see a little clump of bushes, and there a clump of bushes, and there a clump of bushes. For plants, this often happens because plants will drop their seeds. And often the seeds land near the plant that dropped it, and a new plant grows there, and so it ends up in a clump. And we see this clumps of forest and stuff like that. Now this can happen in animals too. Often you see animals like humans, for instance, living in clumps because they're social. You have a group of apes or a group of elephants, and the families tend to live together.
Lions?
Humans live in cities, a lot of them together. Lions, a pride of lions. So that's a clump distribution. And then some organisms have what we call a random distribution. They're just spread out in no particular order You see a lot of weeds like this because weeds often travel by tiny light seeds dispersed by the wind and can be blown for hundreds of miles and will just randomly land somewhere and grow into a little weed. And so they're just kind of dispersed everywhere. Organisms that, like top predators that are very few in number, will often just be randomly dispersed here and there. Video footage.
One characteristic of a population is its population density. Population density describes the number of organisms per unit of area. Another characteristic of a population is called dispersion. Dispersion describes the pattern of spacing of a population within an area. There are 3 types of dispersion: uniform, clumped, and random. One of the primary factors in the pattern of dispersion for all organisms is the availability of resources, such as food.
Okay, that wasn't very good.
Could have done.
Now, the next idea you need to know is called limiting factors. A limiting factor is something that affects a population. It could be things like disease, competition, predation. Keeps the population from being able to expand forever. Sometimes the limiting factor is known as density independent, and sometimes it's density dependent. And we need to distinguish between the two. Density independent factors, a factor that does not depend on the number of members in a population per unit area. Something like a forest fire. Forest fire comes through a forest, it's going to reduce the population. It doesn't matter if it's a small population or a large population. It's going to basically, if it's a big enough forest fire, it'll wipe out everything in the forest. It's density independent. If the factor doesn't care how big the population is, it treats all populations equally. Weather events like flooding, human alterations of the landscape, coming in and building a Walmart, pollution. These are density independent factors. It doesn't matter how big the population is. Different from density dependent factors. Those factors, it matters how big the population is. For instance, disease. A big population has a lot of disease because organisms are living close together and they can give each other sicknesses. But a small population hardly has any disease because there's not many organisms. They're more spread out. They don't give each other the diseases. So that's a density-dependent factor. The factor becomes greater the more organisms there are. Competition. If there's a lot of organisms, competition is high. If there's not many, competition is low. Parasites. These are all things that can reduce the population and keep it down. And so what that brings us into, I'm skipping a little bit here, is the population growth curve. If you put a bunch of organisms in an area, in a field, let's imagine rabbits. You take a big field, throw a couple rabbits in there, and then chart their population over a given time. Or this is mice. Mice in a field. Let's do mice since that's what they have in this graph. This is in millions, by the way. If you count the number of mice in millions, you start low, and you'll see this lag phase. You always see a lag phase. 19 months in, there's not very many mice. But then, the population takes off. And why does it do this? Well, it's a numbers game. If you think about organisms, if we start with 2 mice, if those 2 mice have a couple of babies, how many do we have the next year total? 4. Let's say they just double their population every generation. 2, then 4, and then they double their population. What's next? 8. 16,
38,
32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1024, 2048. If you were to graph this, it would look just like this. 2,048, 4,096, 8,192, 16,384, 32,000, 64,000, 128,000. You're going up dramatically. It starts low, but because of the numbers, this is called exponential growth, you'll get a huge upward swing in the numbers of a population. So you can get a dramatic increase. Now, this exponential growth cannot go on forever. It has to stop because of those limiting factors we talked about earlier. Disease, pollution, not enough space, not enough food. Maybe predators come in and start eating these organisms because there's so many of them. You can have fires, floods, changes in the environment. All of these things will cause organisms not to be able to grow exponentially for long. And so what will they do? They'll level out. This is a normal population growth curve. It has a lag phase, it has an exponential growth, and then it levels out and stays steady at what we call the carrying capacity. The carrying capacity is the total amount of organisms an area can support. And this is exactly what the human population growth curve looks like. Human population for 100,000 years stayed at less than about 30 or 40 million on the planet Earth. And all of a sudden, when we hit the Industrial Revolution and modern medicine, population took off. We had plenty of energy, we had plenty of food, farming, and all that. But now it's just starting to level out a little bit because we're running into problems. We don't have enough food to feed everybody. There's a lot of pollution. And eventually it'll level out. They think it may level out at around 12 billion people on the planet. You know how many there are now? 6. So they think it might double before it's all over. But the carrying capacity is the total amount of people the planet can support. Or if it's a field, it's a total amount of mice that can be in that field. So all population growth curves work this way. If you're growing bacteria in a dish, you'll see the bacteria numbers just, and then it levels out when the dish can hold no more.
Should enable all.
Enable all, let's do it. What the
Not
heck?
recommended.
It's not recommended, but I'm going to take that chance.
Oh, it's gonna mess your PowerPoint up.
Oh, this is funny.
What happened last time?
Had to restart.
Video footage.
Populations may follow an S-shaped curve. There is an initial slow growth phase, a period of exponential growth, and a plateau where the number of organisms the environment can support is reached.
Now, take a look at this. At the end, you get up and down and up and down and up. There's a reason for that. If the population ever goes down for some reason and gets under the carrying capacity, then there's plenty of food to go around for everyone. So everyone will have babies and everything as well, and then the population will go up above the carrying capacity. Now there's not enough food and space for everyone, so you get some death. And then it drops back below. And then it goes back above. And it'll just continue that over and over and over. I think one of these might be a stupid video. No, not this one.
Like the blue background stupid video?
Yeah.
Most large, long-lived organisms grow in S-shaped curves. With plenty of food and living space, the population size doubles in the typical J pattern. But as more organisms appear, they must compete against each other for limited resources. In time, the population stabilizes at a level the environment can sustain, what scientists call the carrying capacity. If the availability of resources changes, the carrying capacity also changes. In nature, resources act as the limiting factors which control population growth.
Now you see that thing went way down. That's because the carrying capacity itself changed. Carrying capacity could change if, say, the amount of food suddenly dropped off. You remember in Ireland, did you ever hear about the potato blight? The disease that went through there, and suddenly the amount of food in Ireland was a lot lower, and that lowered the human population there for a while. Oh, yep, stupid video.
Yay.
Yes.
This one's bad, I think.
They're all bad.
Yes, I think this one's especially bad.
It says here the world's resources are dwindling and the population keeps rising. What? The Earth as we know it may run out of renewable resources in 10 million. For a minute there, I thought it said 10,000 years.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
We're not gonna watch that. Okay, last thing, and then we watch the video here.
Watch it.
R strategists versus K strategists. Populations have different strategies for success. The R strategist is an organism that's small, has a short lifespan, produces many offspring. That's one strategy organisms have evolved. If I'm small, then I don't have to eat much. That's helpful. I can produce a lot of offspring. Can you think of organisms like this?
Crickets.
Crickets, very good, yeah.
Mice.
Mice, rabbits, roaches, insects, all kinds of insects. They're all R strategists. Bacteria, dandelions, short individuals. You need me? Yeah, it's okay. Billy Schumann is in here.
Oh, okay. How about later?
Logan's
Okay,
in.
I just was trying to find y'all. I'm sorry.
I asked them, they said they...
Well, see, I told them they could go to the commons area, but then when they weren't there anywhere else.
Can
You should...
It's,
Do you want them to stay or you want them to...
no. I just
I'm
need
sorry,
to know
yeah.
where it's at.
I was
Way to go.
wondering
Way to
about
go.
that.
You gotta film everything.
Okay, here we go. Small individuals, short lifespan, fast to mature, many offspring, literal no care of offspring. Roaches don't care for their baby roaches, they just let them go. Many offspring die before reproducing and at an early reproductive age. That's called the opportunistic pattern, or R strategist. R meaning they have a high rate of growth. They grow really fast and multiply really quickly and just hope that some of the young survive, just by sheer numbers. That's different from a K strategist. K strategists are large individuals with a long lifespan, very slow to mature, few offspring. This is like us. But much care of offspring. Most young survive to reproductive age. They're adapted to a stable environment. Here's the idea. You can either have a bunch of kids and hope some survive. Very few do, but some do because you have so many. Or you can just have a few kids and make sure they survive by taking good care of them. So there's two ways you can use your energy. And both of them work. Bears, humans, large animals, large trees, they're successful. So are insects and mice and small organisms. Both ways. Oh, we're talking about that tomorrow. That's the human population growth curve. Very interesting stuff. We'll go into that tomorrow. For now, I want to continue. One of the problems with a large human population is pollution and the effects of pollution on the environment. And that's what this video that we started the other day is about. And it's something every biology student should watch and know. So we're continuing. Y'all tell me if you've already seen this part.
We kind of did.
Did you have to do your Willis outline?
Because of the climate pattern that
Past
has
this?
been pretty much the...
Not too far.
Okay, we're done with past this.
Right here.
human lifetime, but in the course of time as defined by this river,
I can cut it off.
is happening very, very quickly.